Successful resource mobilization and project management for small and emerging NGOs. Hints based on the Tanzanian experiences. This is the first edition of the Manual on Resource Mobilization and Project Management for Small and Emerging NGOs. Publisher CBTO Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, January 2022. Physical address Mbazi 1 near Examination Council. Printed by Grid Solutions Printing Company. Tel +255 743479 171 +25578 582 0560. Website https://spongo.wixsite.com/spo. Email cbtongo@yahoo.com cbtongo@yahoo.com or zaajohn@yahoo.com zaajohn@yahoo.com. YouTube SPO NGO. Preamble. This manual details some important actions which, if well undertaken by Tanzanian non-governmental organizations, NGOs, can help them to attain financial self-reliance. But I should from this onset stress that I do not claim that this manual is a magic bullet to challenges of resource mobilization faced by NGOs. This manual has been written by an NGO practitioner who has worked on promoting NGO sustainability in Tanzania, and tips given in this booklet are based on the author's experience of facilitating resource mobilization among Tanzanian NGOs and not otherwise. While this manual may be also useful for other forms of civil society organizations and networks, it however focuses primarily on NGOs which are registered under the NGO Act No. 24 of 2002, and more so the small and emerging NGOs operating in the Tanzanian NGO policy and legislative context. The author also borrows tips from NGO management gurus, among them but not limited to Alan Fowler, David Bonbright, Richard Holloway, Sarah Gibbs, Piers Campbell, Fernando Vincent, John Bennett, and Resource Alliance. Other authors whose hints have been fused in this manual are John Hopkins Institute for Policy Studies, Murray Culshaw, Roshni Sharma, Kumi Nadu, Civicus World Alliance, Ian Smiley, John Haley, Michael Edwards, John Clark, Bruce Shearer, Leslie Fox, ICNL, Susan Petsulo, Maria Narayaga, Tango, FCS, NACO NGO, Zanzibar Resource Center, Rehema Badi, Korha, and many more local and international experts on resource mobilization for NGOs. In this manual we also make distinction between often confused notions of resource mobilization and fundraising based on Richard Holloway 2011's distinction. The manual also touches on the many forms of resource mobilization and explains how undertaking planned actions in the identification, collection, and utilization of both foreign and local resources for the achievement of organizational mission and goal is done, and also explains how NGOs can use various resource mobilization strategies, with great emphasis being on the importance of NGOs ensuring accountability to stakeholders, government, donors, development partners, beneficiaries, peers, and society as a whole. The book also gives hints on how NGOs can maintain relationships with resource providers so as to sustain their means of acquiring resources, hinting that resource mobilization is a process that involves identifying the resources essential for the development, implementation, and continuation of work of achieving the organization's mission. Korha 2010. Three sectors of the modern political economy. The book also hints on why it is important to understand the interconnection among the three sectors of the modern political economy, which are the state, business, and third or citizen sector in resource mobilization, stressing that this is because in this formation the state has legitimate power of coercion, the business/market that of exchange, and the NGOs, third sector, fosters private choice or public good. In the sense of this booklet, NGOs mobilize citizens through values that they share with other citizens and through shared commitment to action with other citizens. Salomon and Hayir 1999. In essence, the author tries to highlight the positive scope of Tanzanian NGOs and their potential by providing examples and tips which NGOs can use in mobilizing resources from both local and external sources. The author also gives a gist of how local NGOs can use foreign resources to build self-reliance and sustainability. The author also emphasizes that the most key resource for an organization is the human resource because it is the human resource which mobilizes and manages other resources. Acknowledgement. I am grateful to small and emerging NGOs from across the country who have had trust in me and allowed me to nurture and coach them on various organizational development themes, more so on resource mobilization and management. I am proud to say that over the last 10 years I have worked with over 100 NGOs and have seen over 40 NGOs grow from having literally no financial resource to having the capacity to access both local and international funds. After the nurturing and capacity building, most of these NGOs have been able to access funds from competitive international funding opportunities. On my list I have about 10 organizations who at the beginning of the coaching only had TSH 200,000 but now have annual budgets of between TSH 500 million and TSH 500 million, which has been gotten from multiple sources of funders, both local and international. I would also like to express my gratitude to my spiritual father Apostle Josephat Elias Mwingara for his unfailing tutelage regarding the greatness of the God we serve, and that he has planted talents in all of us which we should use so to show the greatness of God. I am also grateful to Tanzania Association of Non-Governmental Organization, TANGO, for exposing me to various capacity building opportunities which have helped me to increase my capacity in facilitating NGOs in terms of resource mobilization and management. Most importantly, I would like to thank my wife Iana Twalangeti, son Brady Twalangeti, and my mother Erica Twalangeti for their unfailing support to my endeavors of building the capacity and sustainability of Tanzanian small and emerging NGOs. Contents. Part 1: Resource Mobilization. 4 thoughts, strategies and categories of resource mobilization: individual philanthropy, building grassroots organizations, earned incomes, access to public funding, funding from corporations, funding from foreign donors/agencies, internet fundraising, social investments, non-financial resources, indigenous foundations. Part 2: Proposal writing. What is the importance of proposals? What challenges are attendant to proposal writing? What is a proposal? How many types of funding? What are the terms used in proposals? What is project design? What are the elements of a proposal? How does one format a proposal? What are project goals, objectives and activities? How does one develop indicators? What is budget planning? How does one undertake M&E and report on projects? What is due diligence? What are the other factors to consider? What is priority setting for NGO funding in Tanzania? Part 3: Monitoring and evaluation. Introduction and purpose of M&E. What is effective monitoring? What is evaluation? Monitoring and evaluation framework. What are goal and objective and how are they formulated? What are activities and how are they formulated? What are indicators and how are they formulated? What are M&E tools? How does one develop a logical framework? What is the theory of change? Why is it important and how is it developed? What objective or result statements? What are critical assumptions? What performance indicator statements? What are project or proposal measurement methods and data sources? About the author. This book has been written by Mr. Twalangeti, a facilitator of effective civil society organization, CSOs, mostly non-governmental organizations, NGOs, engagement in the development and political process of Tanzania, East African Community, EAC, and Southern African Development Community, SADC, for the last 20 years. Mr. Twalangeti holds an Executive Master's of Business Administration in Management of Non-Governmental Organizations. The author has for the last 15 years worked with hundreds of small and emerging CSO/NGO, CSO coalitions, and networks at both the national and regional levels, EAC/SADC, orienting them to organizational development, organizational management, and governance and resource mobilization skills and tactics. Other areas that the author has facilitated CSOs on have been self-assessment, advocacy, participatory skills and tactics, policy messaging, mass and political mobilization, relationship building among CSO, government, and development partners, and liaison with the above. The author has also been an integral part in the development of various tools for capacity building for Tanzanian CSOs, which include organizational self-assessment tools, the performance standards for CSOs, operational guidelines for NGOs and the Council of NGOs, the NGO Code of Ethics, the NGO Policy and the NGO Act. Other engagements by the author which are related to the theme of this manual/guide have been providing technical support to a number of NGO/CSO in understanding and abiding by the NGO Code of Conduct, the NGO Act and other regulatory and legislative rules and demands by government and other CSO regulatory and coordination agencies and bodies in Tanzania and internationally set quality standards. The author worked for Tanzania Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, TANGO, for 20 years in various managerial capacities and is the past Vice President and General Secretary of the East African Civil Society Organizations Forum, ECSOF, a member of Technical Committee of the SADC Council of NGOs since its inception 15 years ago and a board member of Citizens Platform of the African Union, CCPU, was the Tanzanian CSO representative on the Consultative Dialogue Forum, CDF, of the EAC for 7 years. He is also a founding member of Capacity Building Tanzania Organization, CBTO. Acronyms: AMO Alternative Marketing Organization, CBO Community-Based Organization, CEO Chief Executive Officer Civicus World Alliance for Citizen Participation, CSO Civil Society Organization, CSR Corporate Social Responsibility, FCS Foundation for Civil Society, GRO Grassroots Organizations, IDRC International Development Resource Center, IGA Income Generating Activity, MFI Microfinance Institution, NACO NGO National Council of Non-Governmental Organizations, NGO Non-Governmental Organization, PLWAs People Living with AIDS, Tango Tanzania Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, CRC Zanzibar Resource Center. 4 thoughts. Tanzanian NGOs have expressed the internal and external challenges outlined below as the main challenges in accessing resources, NACO NGO 2017. The external challenges include donor priorities, new demands by donors in terms of stringent organizational systems and procedures and sophisticated proposal writing, donor conditionality and partner country focused priorities, political interference, donor prejudices, competition from political or governmental NGOs, competition from fellow NGOs, types of networks that NGOs are members of or issues which the NGO promotes, international NGOs working directly with the communities. The internal challenges include limited capacity, accountability, and transparency, founder syndrome, inadequate strategic and operational plans, inadequate awareness of funding opportunities, governance issues, limited communication and branding of the NGOs. Reading from the above stated challenges, it is important that before engaging in any resource mobilization, NGOs form resource mobilization teams, understand the resource mobilization cycle, analyze the external environment, appreciate and analyze the existing competition and develop a resource mobilization plan. Details of how to formulate resource mobilization plans have been outlined in Barnard and Walker's 1994 Strategies for Success Guide, which can be accessed through the author. There is also need to consider issues of internal organizational capacity, which should be coupled with clarity of the leadership's role in the resource mobilization process. NGOs should also consider the issues of transparency and accountability and should improve the quality of financial management and accountability. The NGO should also clearly explain the relevance and impact of the programs or projects they are seeking resource for. NGOs should also take time to understand the trends, which include internet fundraising, developing social enterprise using social marketing techniques. This manual focuses on financial resources because this is the key resource that all NGOs need to be able to function and carry out their work. Depending on the source, financial resources may be targeted to specific expenses or be used at the NGO discretion. Korha 2010. In this manual we advise NGOs to look more for local resources, which means financial and non-financial contributions from the community for project implementation. The local sources of funding include individual citizens, local governments, businesses, institutions, or other local and community actors. This is because local resources not only allow for the implementation of successful community projects, but also contribute to the long-term sustainability of initiatives conducted by NGOs because they build lasting relationships and support from beneficiary communities. The above stated form of resource mobilization follows what are called resource mobilization mechanisms, which are processes of getting or mobilizing resources from providers. The kind of resource mobilization mechanisms that an NGO designs depends on the environment and the capacity of the NGO. Read more from Barnard and Walker's 1994 Strategies for Success Guide, which can be accessed through the author. It is also important for NGOs to understand what motivate donors and givers to support NGOs. Among the motivations are that their work is good, they do better work than others, they are honest and responsible, they are attractive and persuasive, they appeal to a particular interest of the donor, they are supported because the NGO is potentially useful and beneficial to the donor, their work furthers the mission of the donors, the donors support because they are asked and persuaded to do so. With the now shrinking funding for NGOs in Tanzania, with the Foundation for Civil Society, FCS, which is the main grant maker, only funding 150 out of 20,000 CSOs annually, the manual gives tips on how NGOs can be business-like and get earned income. Acting business-like means that NGOs should be professional, efficient, hard-working, and competent. This is because producing goods and services for sale or creating income requires a business-like approach. Therefore, NGOs should acquire business skills and practices. The manual also touches on the concepts of not-profit making and not-for-profit sharing as is understood in the Tanzania NGO legal framework, because NGOs need to understand the concept of profit and non-profit, be conscious, and have a clear and good understanding of what it means for NGOs to make profit. This is because there is often no clarity on what it means to be non-profit. In the manual we make clarity by saying that for ordinary profit-making businesses, the word profit means an excess of income over expenditure which is distributed to private hands, either the owners of the business or the shareholders. But for NGOs, any income is reinvested or plowed back into the work of the organization in line with the objectives. In the NGO sense, this is not profit because the work is never finished. The income is always used for work of the NGO, and it is not distributed for private gains. Richard Holloway, 1997. Particularly in the now constricted funding environment, Tanzanian small and emerging NGOs can earn income for the purpose of running programs, and this can be done by undertaking community economic activities, cost recovery, and enterprises that are linked to the mission of the NGO. However, NGOs should consider the following issues before deciding to earn revenue from earned income: conflict that may exist between the NGO and the business culture, and therefore must separate the business entity from the NGO, and the business should be managed differently, meaning that the business should have a different planning and resource allocation, and therefore the need for prior deliberations with donors, members, and supporters to explain the importance of the business for the NGO's sustainability. The NGOs should also explain this to the public so that they understand why the NGO is undertaking business venture. The NGO should also ascertain its legal status to see whether it allows the NGOs to do business or get revenue from earned sources. Tanzanian NGOs are lucky because the NGOs Act 24 of 2002 allows NGOs to make profit but does not allow profit sharing or distribution. Introduction. Strategies and categories of resource mobilization. In order to get revenue from the four sources outlined above, NGOs can use about 11 conventionally agreed upon strategies. The strategies are further divided into three groups, which are: A. Capturing existing wealth from public and private donors, B. Generating new wealth through market-based approaches, and C. Capitalizing on non-financial resources. The 11 strategies include 1. Foundation funding, 2. Individual philanthropy, 3. Building grassroots citizens organizations, 4. Public resource from government, 5. Resource from development assistance, 6. Engaging corporations, 7. Income earned through trade and exchange, 8. Conversion of debt, 9. Building indigenous foundation which support NGOs, 10. Establishing microcredit programs, and 11. Tapping into social investment in markets, Civicus 1997. A brief on each of these strategies has been given in subsequent chapters. This manual also touches on the key strategies for resource mobilization. The author would also like to emphasize the fact that most of the resource mobilizing mechanism outlined above need an organization to have an understanding of the concept of proposal or concept note writing. However, experience in the recent past shows that having a good proposal in place is not the only prerequisite for accessing funds from various givers or donors. The organization also needs to have sound management, governance, and accountability systems in place. The demand has been exacerbated by the new NGO Regulations 2018, which emphasizes that NGOs should report to government all aspects of its finances, especially grants and donations, so as to comply with the government's demand for accountability and transparency. It should be understood that the assurance of good and effective systems are needed to avoid a common situation in contemporary Tanzania in which NGOs spend much time to develop proposals which meet the requirements of donors, but after the proposal is selected as an innovative idea by the giver or donor, often the organization's effort amount to nothing because a number of NGOs fail the due diligence test because they lack the systems needed for effective project implementation. Therefore, in this manual the author outlines the various systems, manual, and guidelines which organizations should strive to put in place and follow if they are to attract donors. The author gives this caution because he has proven case studies of NGOs which have failed to access grants at the due diligence stage and how that they have been distressed by such actions. Chapter 1. What is individual philanthropy funding? This is about the individual giving person's own funds as an expression of solidarity or support to a common good. This is bedrocked on the strong link of the NGO work to the aspirations of the community and is based on the felt needs of the people, because this is most easy way by which individuals can support the work of an NGO. This kind of philanthropy has its etymology, which is love of other people, and it is purest form individual philanthropy, which means interest of one giving a person's own resources as an expression of solidarity with fellow humans, even strangers, and that a true philanthropist expects nothing in return for their giving. Kelly and Garcia 1997. By this strategy NGOs are assured to generate funds only when they have support from communities, which include individuals. Apart from the support, this form of funding fosters participation, NGO independence, and autonomy in that the funds are people donated in appreciation of the NGO's work, therefore have less conditionality, and the accountability and decision-making is to the beneficiary communities. Most have said this is an alternative way of funding, but in essence this is supposed to be the main and ideal means of NGO funding because NGOs are citizens-owned formations for organizing for the common good, therefore the citizens themselves should be ready to support their formations. NGOs should strive for this strategy because it increases legitimacy of NGOs to government and the private partners, especially in regard to implementation of public policy issues, and dispels the government's wide-held notion that most NGOs in Tanzania carry a foreign agenda because they are foreign funded. Tango 2018. Read more in Anthony Davies's 1997 Managing for a Change book, which can be accessed through the author. NGOs need to master the change management skills so as to create awareness to the citizens of why it is important for them to support the cause of NGOs so as to make the people owners of their own development. As such, for NGOs to succeed, they should understand that people want to be part of something important and of social value. NGOs should also study what motivates different people to give so that they can be able to turn the good motives into gifts. Further, NGOs should learn how to appreciate those who give so that the giver can feel that they are appreciated. Individual giving must be broad-based and encourage many people to give to the common good. In this form of giving we discourage the globally common practice of one wealth person giving to the NGOs because they often end up controlling the NGO. While this is not bad, but it is more beneficial when all are open to donate or give to causes that make a compelling case for support based more on results than on who funded them, works in them, or directs them. Kelly and Garcia Robles, 1997. Individual philanthropy has a special niche in that it deals with large numbers of potential and actual donors. It encourages several, or many active solicitors. If the NGOs uses well the initially small contribution, it compels the givers to a long-term commitment. The proposal or call for support are less complex than that of grant makers/foundations and can be done by even unprofessional fundraisers and is based on the common understanding that it feels good to join others in society for the common good. Like any strategy, it has some pros and cons, especially for Tanzania, where there is no culture of giving to such common good issue as resolving health, water, and education problems. Therefore, there is need to have a parallel strategy of creating awareness on the philanthropic notion so that communities can use the same motivation that they use to contribute to weddings and funerals to support common good causes such as education and water. Individual philanthropy. Who do you give to? NGOs are interested in accessing contributions from individuals to help their organizations, but if NGO staff, board, and volunteers have never solicited funding from individuals, be warned that it involves interesting new psychological dynamics and a variety of learned skills. Therefore, in order to understand something about the dynamics and skills involved in individual giving, it is useful for those who are soliciting gifts to reverse roles, consider themselves as givers, and examine what happens when they are asked to give. A useful exercise is to ask people you know who work for the individual giver or live in the community to which you expect support to tell you about all the approaches that they have received formally and informally from people and NGOs for donations over the last 6 months. They should say what was the organization, or person, and what they were asking for. From this exercise you will get a picture of the ways in which individual philanthropic giving is carried out in your community or sector, and what the giver's motivations are. Norton, 1997. This may give some interesting ideas. Following that exercise, it is both interesting and useful to discuss the ways in which philanthropy is culturally understood in your community. It is likely to be a combination of religious principles and kin, clan or tribal affiliations. Probably people in your community will feel that it is legitimate both to be asked to give the disadvantaged, particularly the disabled, and the victims of natural disasters, and for extended family members. How much farther traditions of giving extend beyond that and may probably be cultural specific to different communities. Holloway, 1997. Possibly people in your community do not have a well-developed tradition of giving money, but are much more comfortable with giving food, shelter, or in kind. An interesting local variant in Tanzania is that people give to weddings, festivals, and burial than they give to other noble development causes. NGOs should be careful in stating the case to the giver. Such careful thought is even more important for countries like Tanzania, which has evolved from a centrally planned economy, in which the state was considered to be the agency which looks after the needy beyond the extended family, and as a result the communities and individual think that this is a function of the government and foreign donors who help the state to do so. Holloway, 1997. It was earlier said that NGOs, especially capacity-building organizations, should also undertake advocacy to the communities and explain the benefits of individual philanthropy and break the mentality in which the government and donor have blocked both the need and the opportunity for people to give to other people, because culturally the main giver has been the government and donor money has also gone through the government, which has made the people not to see the need to give. NGOs also need to nurture and sustain those who have given in order to persuade them to give again, and this can be done by sending them a simple and understandable message to remind them of the need to give. Since the most needed resource in an NGO is the human resources, therefore solicitations for individual philanthropy can equally well result in people being prepared to give your NGO personal time, their sweat, goods, and materials, or their good advice. NGOs should develop skills needed in knowing how to identify likely potential donors, knowing how to ask them for their donations in ways that unlock their desire to help, knowing how to organize the solicitation process, knowing how to present their request for funds in a persuasive way, and knowing how to get both one-time and long-term commitment from individual givers or donors. I know that most readers are perplexed at this new approaches because most emerging and small NGO are always asking if there is a call for proposals, and as you may be aware, NGOs which are used to writing project proposals to foreign donors may find it bizarre to solicit funds from the man or woman on street, or the man or woman on the footpath. In order for NGOs to be successful, they need to develop skills on how to package fundraising information. Asking the following question can be helpful: what sort of people are likely to support our mission? This entails thinking whether there is a particular group of people within the public who are likely to be enthusiastic about an organization. These are likely to be people who are concerned or affected by the issue or problem which the NGO works on. You can also think of who will be interested to support our mission. Here you need to think of the kind of people who are likely to be enthusiastic about your mission, but have not yet been made aware of what can be done, and of what you are doing. End note. In essence, this entails public education and social mobilization of who you want to approach for donations. There is need for a careful thinking and assessment of who within society is most likely to value NGOs' work. There is also need to understand the portions of the society who seem to be keener to support your cause. It should be understood that fundraising should not be directed only towards the rich people in your community, because in most cases the poor proportionately give more than the rich, usually because they can identify with the problems you are describing better than the rich can.